I'm Allison Hepburn, Acrolinx's product evangelist. I'm pretty new to Acrolinx. I left a role as a technical editor at IBM to join Acrolinx. At IBM, I was the principal technical editor for a team of engineers, technical writers, and other technical staff who created education and learning material for global technical support teams. We created a lot of written education, e-learning material, and instructor-led training. At IBM, I found out about Acrolinx and implemented it as part of my team's authoring and editing processes. Using Acrolinx created a lot of improvements to our content quality and also to the efficiencies of our workflows. I'm going to show you today some Acrolinx features in XMetal. The XMetal plugin looks like our other plugins. You're going to have the same look and feel no matter which authoring software you use. This document that we're looking at today is a structured technical document about networking switches. I'm going to turn off the tags so it's a little easier to see the examples that I want to share with you. So we're just going to switch to normal view. When you first use Acrolinx, you're going to want to set up your options. This is something that you typically are only going to do one time until you need to change something. Acrolinx's options have a couple of major categories. The first thing that you're going to choose is your language. Acrolinx natively supports Chinese, Japanese, German, French, Swedish, and English. I don't know any of those other languages, so we're going to stick to English today for this demonstration. The next thing you're going to want to set up with Acrolinx is the rule set. The rule set with Acrolinx is the information that you're giving it to tell it how you want it to check your document. So this is where the distinction between maybe marketing, content, things that are more sales-oriented and maybe less formal and more engaging, versus a very technical instruction manual that's going to tell a user exactly how to execute a task. There might be distinctions in what you want to look at within those documents. Additionally, maybe you have some things you want to check for in a DITA environment versus a non-DITA environment. Those are really where your rule sets are going to come into play. For example, at IBM, we have several different rule sets that we could leverage depending on what kind of content we were creating. So I used a rule set that was very specific to technical documentation, but I had colleagues that had to use rule sets more related to educational information, things that were more tailored to a learning environment. For today, since we're looking at a technical document, we're going to use what's called our TechPubs rule set. The next thing that you're going to tell Acrolinx is what you actually want it to check for. So you can see in this section here, we have some major categories of things to look at. So Acrolinx can check for things like you heard in the presentation, spelling, grammar, and style. So we're going to look at those things today. We're also going to look briefly at something called reuse, which is related to Acrolinx's ability to check for kind of boilerplate sentences. So this is content that you might want to use over and over. Introductions to lists, disclaimers, short phrases related to warning statements or caution statements. Those kinds of things are going to be useful for reuse. The last thing that we're going to set up a check for today is the terminology component of Acrolinx. So that's the deprecated terms. Because we're looking at terminology, we need to tell Acrolinx what lists of terminology we want it to check against. So we're going to look at our company terminology, and then also, because this document is about switches, we're going to look at some switches terminology. Click OK, your options are good to go. Again, that's only something that you really need to do the first time until you want to change something. To run Acrolinx, you just simply click this red button to check on the content. So all Acrolinx is doing here is extracting your text, comparing it to those rules on the server, and then giving you some information about what it found. So you can see the Acrolinx results screen is just going to give us some information about what Acrolinx found in your check. You can see there's a breakdown by those major categories of things that we checked for: spelling, grammar, style, and reuse. Also information about the terminology that Acrolinx found, as well as what it looked at, how many words and how many sentences. At the top of the results screen, you can see how you sit on a range of quality with some scoring information. The scores you can use in order to demonstrate quality over time, improvements, measurable improvements by using Acrolinx. At IBM, we talked a lot about striving to achieve high quality documents. So we use the color coding system of Acrolinx a lot. This sliding scale at the top of the screen shows a red bar for low quality and a green bar for high quality. If you have a medium quality document, it will show up yellow. And this is something that can be customized. Those ranges can be customized based on what you need. But the high quality document, we said a lot at IBM, go for green. strive to get a high quality document before you submitted that content to the next stage of the review or publication process. So when I click continue, Acrolinx is going to insert color-coded flags into my content. And these are what I want to show you a couple of examples of today. So I want to ask a couple questions. In your current role, are you working with content that contains a lot of terms to manage? Terminology was really a major challenge for the content that I worked with at IBM. We had a lot of content that used new technology terms or content that used terms that had been around for quite a while. And some of that terminology was really hard to keep track of. Maybe it had complicated capitalization tied to its branding, or it was kind of weird to spell. So I saw that content all the time in my role at IBM. And it could be really time-consuming and kind of annoying to have to look up that terminology while I was editing a document. Acrolinx can really help with that. So this example here of Phillips head screwdriver is a term that I might look over or have to go look up as an editor. It seems correct, right? But if we click the flag, you can see that Acrolinx suggests a replacement of crosshead screwdriver. You want to use this term because it's global, it's easy to translate, and it's easy to understand for a non-native English speaker. So we're just going to pop in this replacement of crosshead screwdriver, and the flag will go away. Another example of the terminology management that Acrolinx can provide is this flag here on InfiniBand. Again, this is a term that looks correct and might get read over by anyone editing this content. Acrolinx knows that InfiniBand is actually camel case, and it provides the right capitalization for you. Another really useful terminology flag that we have in this example is this one here on check. Again, this is a perfectly correct sentence. Check that the rack environment provides sufficient ventilation. But say you really wanted to have consistent wording for your global audience or for any kind of translation. You want to ensure that all of your users, all of your authors are using make sure as their verb in this context instead of check. So Acrolinx can find that. It tells you to change these terms to make sure. Also, you can see here we have this global replacement option. So you can globally replace all instances of check in the verb form with make sure. So we're going to do that. But notice down here that once I replace those verbs globally, in number 8, I still have select the appropriate check boxes on the enclosed options form and mail it with a check. These instances of check in number 8 aren't replaced with make sure because they're a different part of speech. So Acrolinx knows the difference between this verb form here that got replaced with make sure and this form here, these forms in this sentence that are not verbs. This sentence here has a bright green flag for style. This flag is for avoiding needless words. So this sentence is one that might be difficult to understand or expensive to translate because it contains this expression. Acrolinx suggests replacing this expression with a single word, cite. We're going to do that, and the flag goes away. Same thing here with extremely. Extremely is a needless word, so we can just delete it using Acrolinx. Changing this sentence to 4 words, or honestly, deleting it altogether if you don't need it for your content, which would be what I would argue as an editor, that really cleans up your content to be simpler and clearer. So you can see the same kind of issue with this flag here in B. This is a flag because the sentence is too long. By default, Acrolinx checks for sentences over 26 words, and this is a length that can be customized to your organization's needs. By checking for longer sentences, you really have an ability to simplify and clarify your content. We're in the technology space. We all love to talk, but a more global audience just doesn't understand all of that wordiness. So shorter, clearer sentences make your content more compelling, more readable, and easier to comprehend. You can use Acrolinx today to positively affect that content. This is also a flag where you're really going to depend on your authors and your editors to fix this sentence. You can see we don't have a replacement option here. And this is something where you're going to really depend on someone to evaluate the sentence, determine that they really need all of those words, or potentially ignore it altogether because they decided they're good to go. I'm going to show you one more terminology flag in this document here on IB. So this kind of rule was really helpful to my content at IBM because Acrolinx can say, hey, you need to write this term out, don't abbreviate it. That can really improve your use of acronyms or abbreviations, especially in a setting where your authors or your editors have so much information to keep track of. So we're going to replace this with InfiniBand. The last flags I'm going to show you in this document before we move on to reuse are these two blue flags. In this numbered list, in this ordered list, you can see that we have a flag on A additional, should really be an additional. So this is something, an A and distinction, that is not very complicated for Acrolinx to catch, but it's really easy to read over and miss that error if you're a busy author or an editor. So we're just going to replace that there. And then the same kind of thing with this phrase here. We have double prepositional phrases where you only need one. So we have a flag on avoiding duplicates. This flag really catches an error where you might have started writing something, changed your mind, and forgot to delete the original text. Again, Acrolinx finds this error and tells you to pick one. Say you don't understand this information, you're not sure what avoid duplicates means. If you click on this line with the question mark, you're going to pop into Acrolinx's real-time feedback. So this real-time feedback exists for anything that Acrolinx flags. So all the things that we've already looked at today have the same kind of information. So say you don't understand a flag on a term, you can click on the same section and get some feedback about Acrolinx's flags and examples of what to write. Every flag we looked at today, like I said, connects to the same system. And this is really going to give your authors and your editors a way to learn and improve their quality over time. Most people aren't going to write the same thing incorrectly over and over if they're getting feedback about why it's wrong. So you're really able to teach your writers how to create better content when you use Acrolinx. The last thing I want to show you in this document today is the reuse functionality. So that's back up here. These 4 sentences are list introductions that might occur over a series of documents or several different pages in one book. So maybe you have several writers creating similar content, or a single writer who creates so much content it's impossible to keep track of how to introduce every list. Reuse, like I said earlier, also works great for other kinds of boilerplate sentences, things like admonishments, disclaimers, sentences like that. This first example at the bottom of the list shows something that isn't particularly complicated for Acrolinx to find. One word simply doesn't match. You can see here that Acrolinx provides information about which word or words it is that you want to remove and color codes the text that you should replace your sentence with. So here we can see parts is struck through, and then we have a blue color code for items, the word that it wants to replace. When I click the replacement, same thing as the other flags, Acrolinx replaces the incorrect sentence and the flag goes away. These other examples up here are a bit more interesting. So you can see here in this one, please be finding these parts in a topspin shipment. Might have been written by a non-professional writer. It's not really in correct English, but Acrolinx can still provide you with the appropriate reuse sentence with that same color code and the strike through on the incorrect text. Same thing for these last 2 examples. We have the same reuse sentence with similar feedback from Acrolinx. So this same kind of replacement, red and blue. And then the last one here, which is really wordy. So this is something where we have a modal verb and it's a little bit longer. We want to do this replacement as well. So reuse is really a great tool to leverage consistency, really drive consistency within your writing groups, your editing groups. And it's especially useful particularly for sentences and phrases that you're going to repeatedly use in your text. Drives that consistency with those repeated phrases. It helps your readers understand your content better, it cuts down on translation costs, and it makes it a lot easier to write. Those are all the flags that I really wanted to show you today, so I'm going to turn it back over to Kristen, who can answer your questions. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your meeting.